All right. My wife's movie club did not watch The Third Man, but my wife and I did, so I figured we could do a little extra with The Third Man. So, a quick summary of The Third Man is there's a man by the name of Holly Martins who's an author of westerns. He comes to post war Vienna upon Harry Lime's request, but when he arrives, he's told that Harry Lime is dead. After getting the story of how Harry Lime was hit by a car and helped to the curb where he spoke his last words and then died, Holly finds a new witness that tells him that there was a third man who helped the dead body across the street, sat down, and this third man, who was not in the other accounts, raises questions about Harry's death. The title, The Third Man, refers to these inconsistencies in the story of Harry Lime's death. So Holly wants to know what really happened. He tries to find out, but the police are not interested in who may have killed Harry or any abnormalities because Harry was a very, very bad man. He was selling watered-down penicillin to hospitals, and it was resulting in the death of many children. Holly later will find out that Harry Lime is still alive, and he convinces the police that he's still alive. They dig up his grave, and they find that Holly was correct. The grave does not have Harry Lime in it. So Holly then later will meet up with Harry, and they will have a discussion where first Harry Lime will threaten Holly, then he'll appeal to Holly's humanity associated with Anna, the woman in the story, and then he'll finally try to bribe him into being an assistant for him into his scam and not to turn him over to the police. In the final act, Holly Martins informs the police, which allows them to catch Harry Lime, or at least corner him, and Harry Lime ends up being killed by Holly Martins. The movie's music is strange, and it's reminiscent of the Bikini Bottom theme song. I think they were going for some kind of neutral music, not tense or suspenseful, but not triumphant, not too lighthearted. Anyway, the effect is lost on me. I find it very distracting. The use of light and shadows and the above ground versus below ground is really neat, well crafted. The sewer chase scene specifically is very striking. Not too strange that it distracts from the story, that type of thing. There are three main characters and several side characters, all of which are well acted and portrayed. And for the sake of this review, I'd like to discuss Harry Lime's logic, justification, and political ideals. Then we will briefly review Holly Martin and Anna Schmidt and Harry Lime as the three archetypes.
Nobody thinks in terms of human beings. Governments don't. Why should we?
Harry's logic starts with not thinking of human beings, but to think like the government thinks. If you think of them, those dots, as statistics and or as groups, then they become insignificant parts of a whole. You're not stopping life because the life of the group continues. From this perspective, decisions are about margins, growing or shrinking the group, not a loss of human life. Harry's logic asks, how many dots can you spare?
Down there. Would you really feel any pity if one of those dots stopped moving forever? If I offered you 20,000 pounds for every dot that stopped, would you really, old man, tell me to keep my money? Or would you calculate how many dots you could afford to spend? Free of income tax, old man. Free of income tax.
You might be tempted to see this as a greedy capitalistic idea, but capitalism is not success at the expense of others. It is to offer a service to others which they can choose to be a part of or not. As Walter E. Williams put, prior to capitalism, the way people amassed great wealth was by looting, plundering, and enslaving their fellow man. Capitalism made it possible for people to become wealthy by serving their fellow man. Harry here is thinking and acting like a corrupt collectivist. Like government, it takes the money in taxes or whatever by force, without regard to the individual circumstances, without their choice, and it treats the people like statistics, like dots.
I believe in God and mercy and all that, but the dead are happier dead. They don't miss much here, poor devils.
In this hyperbolic example, Harry claims he's actually helping them. In his mind, he's saving them from struggle, from poverty, from disadvantage, disability, from the crap of the war-torn world that's left over. The argument is meant to be absurd, and we, the audience, and Holly immediately reject it. But this argument is based on a more common and subtle one. That is, that good intentions outweigh results. Many people do things to help others without considering the consequences of their actions or actually asking, is this helping? Think of welfare programs, education programs, and most social justice programs. Has the U.S. welfare program reduced poverty, dependence on the government, or improved self-sufficiency? Has teacher unions, governments, education laws, or standardized testing mandates or programs improved the education in the U.S.? Or do we see more illiteracy and rising groups of unprepared and less educated people? No, results matter. Intentions alone is not good enough. Both results and how we get the results matter. Decision makers should be accountable because results matter. This is the world the third man lives in. His excuses do not shield him from the responsibility of his criminal actions. Harry had to fake his death because of his immoral behavior. That has put him in the crosshairs of the police. The only thing worse would be to allow someone like a government to take actions or make decisions based on Harry's logic because they're not accountable or they're not held accountable. We see this in government programs that fail. They spend millions of dollars and make conditions worse. But because they are not accountable, their solution is always to spend more. Do it again. With a person, they will go out of business and have to alter their approach because accountability and results matter.
After all, it's not that awful. Well, what the fellow said. In Italy, for 30 years under the Borgias, they had warfare, terror, murder, and bloodshed, but they produced Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, and the Renaissance. In Switzerland, they had brotherly love. They had 500 years of democracy and peace, and what did that produce? The cuckoo clock. So long, Holly.
So what is the argument? It sounds like he's telling Holly, you are measuring this incorrectly. You're seeing a loss of dots or death, when you should be seeing advancement of society. It also sounds like he's arguing that his illegal acts are somehow virtuous based on a historical pattern, but he's just cherry picking. He might be trying to say that by creating conflict you raise people above it, but Harry's logic has nothing to do with what he is doing or the results. He is just attempting to divert attention away from his actions with this lame justification. However, there is an element of truth in the statement. Difficulty and difficult circumstances do motivate people. Necessity is the mother of invention, after all. But Harry's logic fails to realize that necessity and difficulties only result in growth when the individuals are free or are allowed to respond based on their own choices. They find new solutions that appeal to themselves and others, and we are raised above where we are. Harry is not talking about it. He's just using a tactic that is not genuine reason or logic. It's just a diversion. He's not creating a market for growth. He's just being dishonest. He is not noble or wise to peddle his deceivingly and deadly medicine. So the three major characters are Holly Martin, Anna Schmidt, and Harry Lime. Holly Martins is the author of cheap westerns. He acts like a classic cowboy hero. He is us in the film. He is kind of boring. He seeks the truth, and he sees things very black and white. He represents the Western-style justice. He looks out for Anna and even sacrifices for her because that's what heroes do.
Holly, you and I aren't heroes. The world doesn't make any heroes.
You've got plenty of
outside
contacts.
of your stories.
Anna Schmidt is a refugee that was saved for a time by Harry Lime. She refuses to do any harm to Harry because he saved her. Yes, Harry helped her, but by so doing, she has become someone who is now missing the big picture and fails to see great opportunities that are right in front of her, like Holly. She represents emotional loyalty, loss aversion, and the welfare trap. Because of one act from Harry that did not last, she maintains loyalty despite knowing Harry is an evil murderer. Harry Lime is a profiteering, predatory, and murderous man with some serious justification issues. He represents a lack of morals. He's opportunistic, arrogant, violent, and he seeks for advancement of self at the expense of others. A careful review of Harry Lime can show us the dangerous justifications both individuals and governments use to take away the liberties of others, which is why Holly Martin, representing Western justice, ends up killing him in the end. What is Anna's response? She hates Holly and the police and won't even acknowledge him after the funeral. She knows Harry was bad, but still hates Holly for taking him away.
You're wrong about Harry. You're wrong about everything.
Well, Anna is probably right about that, but I had fun watching and talking about The Third Man. There are a lot of good things and characters in this film, and a lot of things left to discuss. What did you think of the movie? Whether you agree or disagree with me, I hope you enjoyed my viewpoint, and thanks for watching.
Come out, whoever you are.
Hey!